So there's an excellent heavyweight fight that's really gone under the radar this weekend, which is Luis Ortiz, whose nickname is The Real King Kong, versus Bryant Jennings. Now, I covered this fight initially when it was announced, because it's always been one that's been of interest to me. And to be fair, I think this is the kind of fight that's really going to interest hardcore boxing fans. You know, the casual fans probably be less interested, but you know, us hardcores, this is a very, very interesting fight within the heavyweight division. If you don't know about Luis Ortiz, Cuban amateur, he's unbeaten. In terms of his resume, it's pretty scant. I mean, the level of opposition he's been in with is probably even lower than the likes of, you know, Anthony Joshua and Dillian White. You know, I think the best guy he's been in with is Latif Kayode, who, let's be honest, is a cruiserweight. He's come back from a steroids ban, and he's now in his very, very late 30s. I think he's 37, 38. So, time is not on his side, experience is not on his side. However, in ring, the guy passes the eye test. He looks like a very, very dangerous boxer. He's awkward, he's tricky, he's got that Cuban style. I haven't actually seen him fight for a long time now, but I think from memory he's a southpaw. He seems to hit incredibly hard, and despite the fact that he's actually a very, very big man, and you know, he looks quite a heavy set guy in there, he actually is seemingly quite light on his feet. He moves well, he puts good angles in, and he cuts down the ring, and it's pretty explosive, and he's got fast hands, good combinations, and he does clever things in there with his punch variety and changing levels, and he's got a good jab. You know, if you watch him, he's a very, very eye-catching fighter, and the way he's gone about his business, admittedly against a very, very low level of opposition, means that in terms of the eye test alone, he should be right at the top of the list of heavyweight prospects. I mean, if this guy was a highly promoted Olympian, there's no reason why he wouldn't be getting the kind of chat that Joseph Parker's getting in New Zealand or that Anthony Joshua's getting in England. He does look that good. I think what's interesting is Luis Ortiz is stepping straight up from fighting at journeyman type opposition to fighting a legitimate top 10 heavyweight. This would be the equivalent of Anthony Joshua not fighting Dillian White, not fighting Kevin Johnson, but going straight from fighting Gary Cornish to fighting Romain Stavern or to fighting Kubrat Pulev. You know, that's sort of a steam that Bryant Jennings needs to be held in. Bryant Jennings is a different kind of fighter. He's not got the amateur pedigree and the amateur background of Luis Ortiz. It's funny though, because even though Luis Ortiz is the older guy, you know, he's probably been in the sport for longer. You know, Bryant Jennings, I think, famously came to boxing at 24, if I'm not mistaken. I think Luis Ortiz may have even had more pro fights than Bryant Jennings, but regardless of that, that might be wrong, but regardless of that, you know, Bryant Jennings is seen as the more experienced operator, because he's been in the tougher fights, you know. Bryant Jennings knocked out Arthur Spilker, who's fighting for the world title, against Romain Stavern. Bryant Jennings went the distance against Vladimir Klitschko. You know, people forget now. It's so easy, people forget. But Vladimir Klitschko is one of the biggest punchers in the history of the sport. Full stop. Bryant Jennings went the distance with him, showed an absolutely excellent chin. Bryant Jennings was the first person, in fact the only ever person, to outpoint Mike Perez, another highly skilled, slick Cuban boxer, you know, like Luis Ortiz. Bryant Jennings is a decent operator, and I think people who are looking at this fight saying that Luis Ortiz wins in 1 round or 2 rounds are mistaken here. You know, Luis Ortiz has looked devastating, but at journeyman level, and this step up is massive. This step up is almost unprecedented from a prospect. Step up this much for a single fight. You know, it's actually a remarkable change of levels at this stage. You know, and for me, that's causes for doubt. That is a cause for doubt, you know, because Bryant Jennings, he's not just a chin, you know, he's got an excellent chin. He's also one of the sport's top athletes. He's got David Haye style movement. I mean, Jennings has his own limitations. He's not the most accomplished technician. He hasn't got the most aggressive punching power, but he does some things very well. As I say, he's a tough guy, very good chin, very, very good mover, and I think he can cause Luis Ortiz problems here. Ortiz is going to be very dangerous in the first few rounds. You know, he's an explosive fighter who can overwhelm you. He definitely appears to be the bigger man. He definitely appears to be the bigger puncher here. If Ortiz rounds on Bryant Jennings early on in this fight, he can cause Bryant Jennings trouble, and it will be a big test as to whether Bryant Jennings can weather the storm. But I think he's going to weather the storm because of the way that he took punches from Vladimir Klitschko. Yeah, I've got to acknowledge I'm not on the best of streaks in terms of my predictions, so if you're watching this, please don't think that my prediction holds any weight, because to be honest, you'd be far, far more likely if you flipped a coin and, you know, picked a winner at present with the streak that I'm on. But if you're watching this and you do want a prediction, I'd be inclined to go with Bryant Jennings here. Let me say that I'm a fan of both guys. I've been following both guys for a long, long time here. But what I would say, and this is the most important thing, is that Bryant Jennings is a proven championship 12-round fighter. Bryant Jennings is a fighter who dropped multiple rounds to Mike Perez at the start of their fight, but due to fitness, determination and athleticism, was able to grind out a win by pretty much clean sweeping the later rounds of that fight. You know, Bryant Jennings is a guy who took 3 or 4 rounds off Vladimir Klitschko and did well late on in that fight. He's a guy who got a late stoppage against Arthur Spilka. My point is that this is the guy who is a 12-round fighter. He's a proven 12-round fighter at a much higher level than Luis Ortiz. He really is. And I think Luis Ortiz is another guy who, he's not in the best of physical conditions. You know, he's very heavy, and he's just not got experience of those 12-round fights. He's used to fighting a very low level of opposition who he can literally cripple with his power. Bryant Jennings is going to be different. Firstly, the step up in levels means he's not going to be as hittable. He's not going to be standing in front of you. His defences aren't going to be as open. But also, if Bryant Jennings does last the first 3 or 4 rounds, and I suspect he will based on the Klitschko performance, you know he's going to be moving. You know he's going to be coming on strong. And you know he's not going to fade. Can you say the same for Luis Ortiz? Have Luis Ortiz had that test in his career? Has he proven his stamina? You know, the other thing about Luis Ortiz, and you know, Bryant Jennings is not the most explosive knockout artist, but Luis Ortiz has been in with such low level of opposition. I know he's a slick Cuban amateur and we back his technical capability, but how sure are we of his defensive skills? How sure are we of Luis Ortiz's chin? I think there's too many questions and too many intangibles for Luis Ortiz, and I think at this stage this is too big a step up too soon. I think Ortiz should have had 1 or 2 more fights instead of the low level of opposition he's been in with. You know, if he'd have fought, you know, the Tony Thompsons of this world ahead of this, or you know, that type of fighter, even a Kevin Johnson, I'd be more inclined. But it's just too much too soon, and I think Bryant Jennings is not the kind of fighter you want to go in with if you've got stamina concerns and if you've got weight concerns, because he's a seriously fit guy who's known for coming on strong. I mean, if you look at how skilled Mike Perez was, another Cuban amateur, you know, Mike Perez was boxing Ortiz's ears off, but he was able to, sorry, Mike Perez was boxing Jennings' ears off, but Jennings was able to stay in the fight and essentially win the fight by grinding it out and being a fitter guy. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if the same thing happens again with this fight. I'm looking forward to it. The winner of this fight is a legitimate top 5 heavyweight in this division. Luis Ortiz is a hugely exciting prospect who passes the eye test, but I'm predicting the more proven fighter, the guy who's more experienced over championship distance, and I'm going Bryant Jennings to win this fight. Points is the most sensible prediction. When a fighter can fade, when a fighter has stamina concerns, they're always open to the late stoppage. I don't rule either out. Let me know your thoughts on this fight. I'm looking forward to it. Don't put your mortgage on the prediction. Many thanks for watching.